I used to believe my daughter had the perfect marriage. A loving husband, a stable home, and a future that seemed unshakable. For years, I praised Daniel, the man who had effortlessly won not only my daughter's heart but the admiration of our entire family. He was polite, dependable, and always knew the right things to say. If someone had asked me to name a flaw, I wouldn't have found one. Daniel had a way of making people feel safe. He laughed at my husband's old jokes, helped my grandson with his homework, and never missed a family gathering. I often told my friends how lucky my daughter, Emily, was. Men like Daniel are rare, I would say, convinced that her life was as perfect as it seemed, but looking back, I realize that perfection is often a carefully curated illusion. The first crack appeared on a quiet Sunday afternoon. I was setting the table while Emily and Daniel played with their son in the backyard. Laughter filled the air, the kind of easy joy that made life feel warm and whole. But when I glanced up from the window, I caught something that didn't belong, a flicker of unease in Daniel's expression. He was holding his phone, his body slightly turned away, typing quickly as if afraid to be seen. It was brief. A split second. But something about the way he stiffened when Emily called his name sent a strange chill through me. I brushed it off. Maybe it was nothing. Or maybe I didn't want to believe otherwise. Days passed, and the feeling lingered. Small things began to stand out. Daniel had always been present, attentive, but suddenly, he seemed distracted. He would excuse himself during meals to take calls, his voice low and hurried. He stopped making eye contact as often, and when he did, there was something guarded in his gaze. Then, there were the late nights. Daniel had always been home by 6, like clockwork. But now, he worked late. Too late. Emily reassured me it was just a busy season at the office, but her voice lacked conviction. I noticed the way she watched him now, the faint crease in her brow when he came home past midnight, mumbling something about deadlines. Still, I said nothing. I had no proof, just a growing discomfort that settled in my chest like a weight. Then, the moment that sealed my doubts came unexpectedly. One evening, while visiting Emily's house, I went to retrieve my phone from the living room when I saw Daniel's phone, screen still glowing, abandoned on the armrest. A name flashed across the top, one I didn't recognize, followed by a message that made my breath hitch. I miss you. When can we meet again? A slow, terrible realization crept over me. The perfect family I had admired for so long was beginning to fracture. And for the first time, I wondered if it had ever been real at all. I stared at the message on Daniel's phone, my pulse hammering. The words blurred for a moment as disbelief clashed with the truth I didn't want to accept. I miss you. When can we meet again? For a long moment, I hesitated. This was his personal phone, his private conversation. Snooping wasn't something I had ever done before. But the weight in my chest told me that whatever lay beneath this message was something I could no longer ignore. I glanced toward the kitchen, where Emily was laughing softly as she prepared dinner, unaware of the storm brewing in the next room. I could hear Daniel talking to my grandson, his voice light, carefree, like a man with nothing to hide. But I knew better now. My fingers hovered over the screen. Just one more message. One more glimpse to confirm my worst fears. Before I could make a decision, the phone vibrated again. A new message. Same place as last time? I can't stop thinking about you. A sharp breath escaped me. My grip on the phone tightened. There was no misinterpreting this. It wasn't a misunderstanding, a work-related text, or a harmless exchange between friends. This was betrayal, plain and simple. My hands trembled as I placed the phone back where I found it, my mind racing. How long had this been going on? Who was she? Did Emily know? A dozen questions swirled, each one heavier than the last. Dinner that night was unbearable. Every glance Daniel threw at Emily, every smile he gave their son, felt like a performance. I studied him in a way I never had before, his casual charm, his easy laughter. How many lies had he told under this same roof, at this very table? Emily, oblivious to the battle raging inside me, asked if I was feeling unwell. I forced a smile, nodding. Just a little tired, I lied, but I wouldn't rest. Not now. That night, while the house slept, I made my decision. If Daniel had secrets, I was going to find them. The next morning, I feigned cheerfulness as I joined Emily for coffee, casually asking about Daniel's schedule. "Working late again?" I probed. She sighed, stirring her tea absent-mindedly. "Yes. It's been happening a lot lately. He says the new project is demanding." A lie. I knew it now. I had to see it with my own eyes. So that evening, as Daniel kissed Emily goodbye and left for work, I followed him. My hands gripped the steering wheel tighter with every mile, my heart pounding. He wasn't heading to his office. He took a different route, one that led to a quiet, dimly lit parking lot behind a boutique hotel. Then, as I watched from a safe distance, the final betrayal unfolded before me. Daniel stepped out of his car, and moments later, a woman emerged from the hotel's entrance. She smiled, walking straight into his arms, and just like that, the last remnants of doubt shattered into dust. The silence between us grew heavier, thick with unspoken accusations. Ethan wasn't just watching anymore, he was waiting. For what, I wasn't sure. But his patience was unnerving, his every glance carrying the weight of an impending storm. Then, everything unraveled. It happened late one evening when Ethan came home earlier than expected. I hadn't heard his car pull in, hadn't noticed his footsteps approaching. I was in the living room, sprawled on the couch, Max nestled close beside me, his head resting in my lap. My fingers moved absently through his fur, the way they always did when I sought comfort. I didn't hear Ethan come in, until his voice cut through the quiet. "What the hell is this?" I froze. My hand stilled against Max's back. Slowly, I turned my head to see Ethan standing in the doorway, his face twisted with something I couldn't immediately name: anger, disbelief, something darker beneath it all. "What are you talking about?" My voice was steady, but inside, my heart pounded. Ethan stepped closer, his gaze flicking from me to Max and back again. His fists clenched at his sides. "You don't even see it, do you?" he asked, his voice low and tight. How strange this is. How unnatural. A chill ran through me. "Ethan, you're being ridiculous." "Max is just what?" He took another step forward. "Your emotional crutch? Your replacement?" I recoiled as if struck. "That's not fair." His laugh was cold. "No? Then tell me, when was the last time you looked at me the way you look at him? When was the last time you reached for me first?" I opened my mouth to argue, to tell him he was imagining things. But the words wouldn't come. Because deep down, I knew he wasn't wrong. Ethan exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. "I've tried to ignore it. Tried to tell myself it's nothing. But it's not nothing, is it?" Tension coiled in the air between us, thick and suffocating. For the first time, I saw what this had done to him, the exhaustion in his face, the raw edge to his voice. "I don't know how we got here," I whispered, my throat tightening. Ethan studied me for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "Neither do I," he admitted. "But I know I can't keep pretending." A heavy silence stretched between us. Then, without another word, he turned and walked away. The sound of the front door closing behind him echoed through the empty house, and just like that, the thread holding everything together finally snapped. The house felt hollow without Ethan. Even Max seemed to sense the shift, pacing anxiously by the door as if waiting for him to return. But he wouldn't. Not tonight. Maybe not ever. I sat alone in the dimly lit living room, my fingers gripping a cold cup of tea I had no intention of drinking. My mind replayed our argument in loops, each word cutting deeper the second time around. Was he right? Had I let the loneliness fester into something unnatural? The thought made my stomach twist. But the truth was undeniable. I had chosen comfort in the wrong place, seeking solace in silence instead of fighting for what was left of my marriage. My phone vibrated on the coffee table. A message: "Ethan, we need to talk. Tomorrow." My breath hitched. Relief, dread, and something else tangled inside me. I wanted to believe this meant there was still hope, that maybe, just maybe, we could repair what had been broken, but then another text came through. Ethan, I want Max gone. A sharp pain lanced through my chest. My eyes darted to Max, who had curled up beside the couch, his tail thumping weakly against the floor as if sensing my distress. No, I whispered, shaking my head. Not like this. Ethan was giving me an ultimatum. Maybe he thought this was the solution, a way to sever whatever unhealthy attachment he believed had formed. But he didn't understand. It was never about replacing him, it was about filling the void he had left behind. Tears burned my eyes as I reached down, running my hand through Max's fur. He looked up at me, trusting, unwavering. Tomorrow, I would have to face Ethan. Tomorrow, I would have to decide. But tonight, I just sat there in the quiet, holding on to the one thing that had never abandoned me.